How's everybody today? So I'm Gloria Duffy, co-president and co-CEO of Commonwealth Club World Affairs, and we are extremely happy to have you here today. As the president of the American Bar Association told me, this is a moment, and he's crisscrossing the country to talk about this moment. It's a time of challenge for our constitutional system, the legal system, law firms, the courts, the entire structure that underpins our constitutional democracy. There are substantial issues involving the law itself, attorneys, threats against law firms, pushing back, and deals being made, and so on. He'll talk about all of that. We'll have a very interesting presentation and discussion for you. And I'm very happy. He's, of course, Bill Bay, president of the American Bar Association. The talk is called Defending Justice and the Rule of Law. And I want to take just a moment before he and the moderator come out. How many members of Commonwealth Club World Affairs are here? That's a good showing. Thank you. Thank you for your support. What your membership dues do is not only support what goes on here in the room, but what happens here goes out on the airwaves to literally millions of people. Weekly radio broadcast listened to by 1 million people every week, 230 stations across the country. This talk and conversation will be broadcast on that weekly radio program. 5 podcasts a week, downloaded hundreds of thousands of times a year. And of course, videos posted on YouTube. I think we're at 47 million views of our videos there. There are about 2,700 programs there. So what you do is support all of that. We inform ourselves, we discuss what's going on, we learn, we think about what actions we want to take, and we share that all with the rest of the country and the rest of the world. Those of you who aren't members, please consider joining. $13 a month, tax deductible. Thank you so much to those of you who are members. There's a membership QR code. There are some brochures on some of the seats. You can talk to the front desk staff if you're not a member. Without further ado, let me introduce not only Bill Bay, but we have a terrific moderator today, Ann Ravel. Ann is the former chair of the Federal Election Commission and the California Fair Political Practices Commission, also a former Assistant Attorney General from the U.S. Department of Justice. Could not be a better person to engage in the conversation with Mr. Bay, and let them get to it. Thank you so much.
All right, we're set. Good to see you all here. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's, one of the challenges when we're talking about the rule of law today is how do we explain it to people that we know? We can talk about rule of law and it's words we use as just 3 small words, but how can we explain it to people where we worship, people where we go to our school concerts, people we see at Costco, the grocery store? That's really the challenge that a lot of us are facing. You may have some great ideas as we continue to search these kind of things for these things. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon. I wasn't sure. It was, we're going to talk about the rule of law. Let me tell you about the rules of travel. Don't take the last flight into a town. It's more likely to be late, and it was last night. So I got here got to the hotel about 2. So it's tiring. I was better when I was 20. But thank you for the invitation to come to the Commonwealth Club. This is great experience. I looked up some of the great history and tradition. I noticed one of the first speakers was Teddy Roosevelt. I thought, this is pretty cool. Shirley Temple Black was the president. I thought, this is really cool. So that makes it, I think, very special, at least for me today. I'm president of the ABA, American Bar Association. We have a long history like the Commonwealth Club. And your history, and I think, and the Commonwealth Club's history and the ABA's history really allow us to better understand what's unfolding in the news every hour. I was just looking at arguments this morning from the Supreme Court, what's happening in our country, the attacks we're seeing in the United States on our judiciary, on our profession, on lawyers and the rule of law, and along with attacks on the American Bar Association itself. This is not the year I anticipated when I was chosen to serve as president of the ABA. I must confess, I was hoping to be Sandra Bullock and win the Miss Congeniality Award. I think that opportunity has passed me. It's not, the year has been quite different. In fact, I would guess that it hasn't been the year any of us envisioned, but it's the year we have, and the year we have to deal with. The legal profession is facing profound changes and challenges. We must be relevant to lawyers who see the world and the profession far differently than we did when I was growing up. That means we have to change a lot of our methods, change how people become involved and engaged in organizations like the Bar and the Commonwealth Club, how we're organized, how we deliver value to people who are members. The challenge of change is really important in our world, whether you're a lawyer or a business leader, wherever you are. I often quote a friend of mine, Pat Gillette, who I think is from San Francisco, who says change is like heaven. Everybody wants to go there, but they don't want to go there now. And that's the world we're inheriting. That's the world we have. Everybody loves change, but not for somebody else, not for them. But there's another challenge that we're going to talk about today a bit, a challenge that's confronting here in the United States, but also in legal systems throughout the world, in a number of European countries and in other countries. We've always read about those same problems are here at our doorstep. We're faced challenges to a justice system and a profession which are under duress, and is facing challenges which threaten its very existence, which seek to undermine the bedrock principles that we have lived with for almost 250 years. Today, frankly, is a day I never imagined we would see in the United States. Attacks on the rule of law, attacks on judges, attacks on lawyers, attacks on the profession, apparent disregard of due process, and now attacks on the American Bar Association. The shocking part is it's all from our own government. And the frequency and intensity of it shows no sign of lessening. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is really talk about what's the pattern, because there is a pattern here. There's a lot of noise everywhere. I mean, we can read about Ukraine and Gaza and the tariffs and the jumbo jet and all the other things that are going on. And there are lots of things going on in our world. But one of the things we're trying to focus is really what's the pattern, the frequency, intensity, and the attacks on the rule of law, because that makes everything work. Officials are making blunt statements that suggest they're above the law. The courts should not interfere with what the executive branch is doing. Government officials suggesting they will ignore general judges' rulings, or statements today that we're going to generally follow court orders. Our courts are grappling with the issue of whether court orders are being ignored in connection with the deportations taking place. You've read about that and been following it for weeks. Government officials openly question whether due process is needed in certain areas and whether the Constitution should be followed. Officials suggest they're going to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. Appointed and elected officials call for the impeachment of judges simply because they don't rule in their favor. In the public hallways of Congress, and I was there just 2 weeks ago, in the House of Representatives, the offices, this is a public hallway, one elected leader posted a wanted sign depicting the names and photos of judges who have ruled against the administration and who he believes should be impeached because of their judicial rulings. Elected officials of the government have posted social media messages that made remarks criticizing judges for their rulings, but in highly derogatory terms. And we wouldn't allow our kids to talk that way, and yet there seems to be no outcry about it. I mean, why do leaders, our leaders, believe such language and conduct is ever appropriate? And it's okay to criticize decisions. What's not okay is to criticize judges in these highly derogatory terms. As reported by many reputable media outlets, some judges have received anonymous deliveries of pizza to their homes and to the homes of their children. In some cases, the senders are reported to be names that conjure dark images of past violence against judges and their families. These are really blatant attempts to intimidate judges. So where are the condemnations? Where's the investigations? Where's the pursuit of the perpetrators? I don't know whether you looked, Reuters had an article Monday, I believe, that identified 600 posts on social media and message boards since February. Not about the judges. This is about the judges' families. Okay? This is about the judges' families. And the sad thing is we have three branches of government. Obviously, Congress, it's telling you things you already know. Congress enacts laws. Congress appropriates money. The executive executes the laws and is supposed to spend the money as appropriated. But the courts determine whether laws are constitutional and whether the government has overreached or acted contrary to the statutes and Constitution. It's what we learned really in 8th grade, or we used to learn in 8th grade. And judges are simply doing the job that they're supposed to do, and yet their families are now at risk. The attacks aren't limited to judges. I think you've seen the media coverage. Lawyers and law firms are attacked for the legal work they've done or for the clients they represent. The motive is very clear and stated in the executive orders and the social media posts. I don't think there's a lawyer in the country that doesn't know this is wrong. Because every one of our state Supreme Courts, every one, all 50, have a rule that says, a code of professional responsibility, that says a lawyer's representation of a client does not, let me emphasize, does not constitute an endorsement of the client's political, economic, social, or moral views or activities. These are really attacks not just on law firms and lawyers, they're attacks on everyone's right to the legal representation of their choice. That's what it is. And I know there's a lot of talk about certain law firms that have responded in certain ways. Let me suggest that isn't the issue of what 8 or 9 law firms have done in response. The question is, why is the executive branch taking such actions that are contrary to the Code of Professional Responsibility as adopted in every one of our state Supreme Courts? These unfair attacks have galvanized and unified the bar in a way we haven't seen. It's a story that hasn't gotten a lot of press. But governing boards of bar associations throughout the United States, many of them mandatory, but as well as many bars in the world, have spoken in defense of the rule of law and condemned these actions. The words vary, but their message is clear, and their membership numbers in the millions. I am very proud, as the president of the American Bar Association, of bar associations that are not afraid to speak in times of crisis. Proud of the work each of them does to make lawyers better and to serve their communities. But the ABA is also not immune from these attacks. Because we have the courage to speak up in support of bedrock principles of our democracy, we've been attacked. The executive branch has defunded ABA programs that made the legal system accessible to all and promoted the justice system. For example, we do rule of law work where we train lawyers and judges in 60 countries. It's chaired by retired United States Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. That's been terminated. Our work representing unaccompanied minors at the border who are seeking asylum, that's been terminated. The work we've done in disaster legal relief for 50 years, that's been terminated. And our work in the domestic sexual violence space has been terminated, although the news from yesterday was that a federal district court said the government had retaliated based on our exercise of our First Amendment rights and has restored that. So the point is, we're seeking relief in courts. We are taking action. It's not enough to stand, we also have to take action. And we're taking action for what we believe are wrongful acts by our government. There are also attacks on many institutions regarding diversity. The ABA is a target, as is the AMA. One of our core principles is to work toward the elimination of bias in our courts and our profession and enhance diversity. We are not retreating from that. Bias is real. We've measured it. There are studies out here. Bias is real in our courts, and we have to address it. I've yet to hear of any judge from any side of the political spectrum that doesn't believe and said so, that every person in his or her court should be treated the same. And so do we. And we're going to continue to have the courage to say so. And one of the ways you do that is you measure bias and you deal with the issues and try to solve these problems. We also hear the administration frequently suggest, I love this comment, well, do you want excellent people or do you want diverse people? As if those are the choices. I mean, it's a false choice. Excellence thrives on diversity. And so we have to be vigilant to control the narrative and not allow others to misrepresent or control the narrative. For our nation, well, let me say all this. When we have spoken out about a number of these things. And when we do, a number of elected officials have responded by avoiding the substance of the issues and do the way they always do, which is they complain about something the ABA said or did years ago. You didn't speak then. You should have spoken then. You should have done this. Much of that narrative is really false. For example, we've spoken 15 times in the last 8 years about criticism of judges. It doesn't really matter who said it. There's been Republicans who've said it. There's been Democrats who've said it. There's independents who've said it. It was and is wrong, and we've said so. But let me be clear on this important point. It doesn't matter if we'd never spoken at all. There is never a wrong time to stand up and do what's right, and that's where we are. And I think as parents, we know that all too well. My wife and I raised 3 kids. There were many nights when the kids were in middle school and high school, we'd go to bed and postmortem the day and talk about, well, we should have said this. We should have handled this situation differently. You know, you should have spoken up. But we didn't forfeit the right to speak because we didn't speak one day. We endeavored, like you, to wake up the next day and do the right thing for our family. And for our nation, today is that next day. We have to stand in for what's right. There cannot be threats against judges, lawyers, law firms, and bar associations. We can't have a disregard for the rule of law and due process. I don't know what the future's going to hold. There are days I want to know the future, and other days I'm glad I don't. There will likely be more difficult days. There's going to be more threats. There's going to be more attacks. There is one thing I hope that you will take away from this, that you can count on. The American Bar Association will continue to stand, will continue to speak, and will continue to act. Not because we're against any administration, but because we believe in standing up for the bedrock principles that have guided our country for 250 years. The rule of law, due process, our judicial system, our profession. There are risks. Despite that, we're going to fight for what we believe in. It is not a fight we won, but it has landed on our doorstep, and we have to meet the challenge. We may suffer, we may be bruised, but you will know who we are and what we stand for. There is a reason the American Bar Association exists. One of those reasons is to lead the profession in times like these when we have to fight for the rule of law, we have to fight for our judicial system, and we have to fight for our profession. But we need everybody to rally to the cause. We need people to voice their position to your elected representatives. People need to hear from their neighbors. Letters and op-eds to papers are great in every city. Posts on social media really help. Educational programs like this in our communities are terrific. We need everybody to tell their neighbors, everybody to tell those they see at the grocery store, at the ball game, those where they worship why the rule of law matters, why due process matters. And we have resources we develop at the ABA, which you can access anytime on our homepage, what the message should be, what you can do, how you can be involved. We're really asking lawyers everywhere to stand with us, join us, and support us with their voice, times, and resources. And if you're not a lawyer, it's still okay. You can still join us. The point is, together, we are stronger. We all can't do this alone. The ABA can't do this alone. Lawyers can't do it alone. The fight to preserve our democracy is too important to stay silent, and we will not stay silent. For our profession, today is really the next day. But let me also suggest it's the most important time for our profession. The rule of law is more important than our differences on issues, what your political party is or your philosophy is, where you live or what you do. I believe this is our time. This is our moment to remind lawyers and our communities why our profession is important, to do what is right, even in the face of difficult circumstances and risks, even when we are discouraged. And I know people are discouraged. I can go online and get discouraged every hour, but there are opportunities. I believe this can be our finest hour as a profession and country. There are clear choices facing all of us. We can choose to remain silent and allow these acts to continue, or we can stand for the rule of law and the values we hold dear. We call upon the entire profession and our communities and business leaders to speak out against intimidation. We acknowledge there are risks to standing up and addressing these important issues. I know only too well. But if the American Bar Association does not speak, who's going to speak for the organized bar? Who's going to speak for our courts? Who's going to protect our system of justice? And if we don't speak now, when will we speak? Now is the time, in my view, for every part of our legal profession and our communities to speak with one voice. It's now, crisis management in times like this is important. Crisis leadership is far more important. And that's what you're going to see from the ABA. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you on these issues. We're going to discuss them. We'll want to hear your ideas, hear your questions. Some of the best ideas for dealing with this may come from the back row, those of you who are out there. But it means a great deal to have a chance to talk with you.
Thank you so much, Bill, for your commentary. And I'd like to ask a couple of questions myself before, and thank you all for being here, because this is a really significant issue in this country. And we're looking forward to hearing your questions as well. And would really appreciate having responses to that. You know, I have two questions that I wanted to ask you. And you did talk about DEI, and I know that the American Bar Association has taken efforts to make sure that DEI is respected in the legal profession. But my question about it is, having been a woman lawyer, is what has been the impact on women lawyers because of what is taking place with DEI?
Well, we don't know all the impact yet, but it's nothing positive. Nothing positive at all. People, I mean, it's one of the issues that's going to face us. In 3.5 years, we're going to elect a new president. I don't know who that's going to be. Let's assume we clone Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, FDR, whoever else you think is great, and put them all into one. They are still going to have to deal with the world that we are. And we're going to deal with the world where people are going to think that, in many instances, diverse people are second-class citizens. They've gotten there because they're not good enough, or women aren't good enough. That's the world we got to live in. That's the world we have to be determined to face now and confront and say, this has to stop. This must stop.
Right. And another question that I have that is somewhat relevant to this, because I am very concerned about issues of international human rights that the United States has, in only small doses, signed on to human rights declarations or laws. But in the United States, it is true that the International Criminal Court was, in fact, accepted by the United States government as an issue, and yet there are two human rights advocates who have been challenging the administration's executive orders, imposing sanctions on the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and also they were told that they may not talk to the person who is the chief prosecutor. The lawyers and advocates are not allowed to talk to them. So the advocates are people who have done what lawyers need to do and should do, which is to provide legal advice, expert analysis, and evidence. And we know that the International Criminal Court is where victims of grave human rights violations turn, when national legal systems fail to provide the justice. And now, because they're not allowed to speak, they, and I believe the ACLU, have litigated against this executive order. And as a result, they claim that there is a First Amendment violation. And I would like to hear your perspective on that.
Well,
as well.
I mean, that's the broader issue. Put aside the International Criminal Court for a minute. It's the free speech issues. That's what's really happening. This, in so many times in cases, one of the hardest things to prove is to show intent. Why are these things happening? The intent's been laid out. I mean,
right.
The intent is really clear, and it's a violation of free speech. When private citizens have said this and the government wants to retaliate, we're seeing that not only in the U.S., we're seeing it in other countries. And when I'm on the phone with presidents of international bars and through the wonders of Zoom, you can stay in touch all the time. They're using the U.S. as an example of what to be careful and how to protect themselves. And that's the broader issue is right there. And we've got to be informed. I mean, this is why this program is so helpful. I mean, I love movies, and so I'll go into movies. But Apollo 13, I think the greatest lawyer movie ever made, and you're thinking, this guy really is nuts. But it's, as you remember in the particular scene, they're all in one of the side rooms, and everybody's yelling, the capsule didn't have enough oxygen. It's going to bounce off the atmosphere. The heat shield's burned up. All these terrible things. We can focus on the number of terrible things, but Ed Harris walks in and says, everybody calm down. Let's wake everybody up. Let's get started to work the problem. And that's where we are. We have to wake people up, and we have to inform them and get going to work the problem, because there are problems here. We've got to be strategic about what we say, because we can't say something every 3.5 minutes. But the broad issues, the free speech issues here, the attacks on our courts, the attacks on our profession, these are core issues, okay?
Yes, I appreciate that. And I also wanted to mention, I'm on the board of Equal Rights Advocates, and they are so afraid of what they have on their website and the attacks that they've already been receiving. And Equal Rights Advocates is about women. Most of the lawyers are women, and they're very concerned about how they can follow through with what they think are important cases that will help the community. And I just, if you have any thoughts.
I mean, fear is one of the motivators. People are worried, and I can't tell you it's a risk-free world. It's not a risk-free environment.
Yeah.
I mean, I know have had things, I've had emails land on my doorstep which, were, offensive. And we've changed security measures in my own office because of that. And I'm in a fairly large firm with 500 lawyers. That's the reality where we're at. So fear is, you have to count the costs. But this is what's really important as we discern what the law is. That's one thing, but what people say the law is. We have a lot of people saying what the law is, but it's not.
Yeah.
And I think we need to not shy away to standing up. We need to determine where the line in the sand is that we're drawing, and then stand on that line. That's what we're trying to do at the American Bar Association. Here's the line. You can attack us. I don't say we're going to win everything. We're going to be bruised. You're coming after us, but we've counted the cost, and they're going to fight on this fight.
That's great. That's great to hear. Also, definitely we would expect and hope that there will be questions from people in the audience. Please silence your phones to avoid any disruptions. And even so, I mean, we're very welcoming of your questions. And
I didn't even bring my phone because I knew I would goof up, okay?
You knew that you would start.
Yes, I would violate the rule.
Someone would be calling you,
yes.
No question about it. So anyway, thank you all very much. And please feel free to ask questions.
My question is, what are the actionable items that you're directing the Bar Association to do at this moment?
Well, I think we've tried to take, really look at who's the coalition of the willing, okay, and who's willing to do things. So first thing we tried to do is assemble a coalition of, let me drop back. First thing we did decide, what are our core principles? What really matters? What line are we going to stand on? Second was assembling a coalition of the willing. We wanted the bar and the firms to speak with one voice. And you'll see we have a web page where we list everybody's statements. So first of all, what are lawyers saying? And I think we've used that and we pushed it out on social media. We've been fairly aggressive out on social media, not every day, well, probably every day, but new things every 2 or 3 weeks. We look very hard at working on LinkedIn, where most lawyers are, Instagram. We pick the audiences we're at. We have then taken the action we've filed some suits, more on our operations of when the government's doing things. We have responded, to a lot of inquiries that are coming. We're looking at other options that are out here and open to what suggestions you have that actions can be taken. A lot of focus on what can I control that's in front of me. I started with, how do I talk to my board of governors? How do I talk to my leadership? How do I talk to my membership? How do I talk to lawyers? Who the audience is? I mean, we've been to Congress. It's persuading every member of Congress is going to be tough, okay? It's going to be tough. But we have a real strategy to try to be on the high road and stay with the principles that we think underline our government, not get into the mud. We're not going to mud wrestle with people. I mean, I've done that in court, litigation-wise. It never ends very well. But I think the actions, that's really the challenge. I think the two challenges for us is what do we say to convince people and what actions we take? What ideas are you thinking about?
I'm thinking specifically about the legislature not acting, not doing their job at this moment. And I'm wondering what pressure is being put on the legislature from all the members of the American Bar Association, not just the leadership, but each of the members and firms also.
Well, we were just in D.C. April, 5th or 10th, ABA Day, so where we lobby members of Congress, some who wouldn't talk with us, okay, just to be fair. Some who sent out staff members. I got a letter from 6 senators said, we're not going to talk to you anymore and do anything. And of course, then they came out and met with us after all. So where we're directly lobbying with them, hey, you have to support legal services because we're very big on legal services because it needs our support, and then the rule of law. I think that's where I come back to. Congressmen and senators need to hear more from their constituents. They need to see more in op-eds. They need to see, not tirades, principled arguments. Hey, I'm somebody down the street, okay? I'm a worker here, and this is what matters to me. They need to hear more. I can speak every 2.5 minutes. All of us can, but it's the volume makes a difference too. And so that's what we're calling people to do.
I'm just wondering if every single lawyer in the American Bar Association sent a letter, how powerful that would be to their representative. No,
it's exactly. I mean, that would be great. That would be great. It's not something we have considered, but we've urged people to contact their representatives. Many of them know them personally. And we've tried to provide the arguments they can to be more principled arguments, say, oh, gee, I'm against the president. I mean, that's not helpful. Talk about the issues that are here.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody does something that aggravates them.
I have a couple of the questions that are addressed to you. The first one here is, the ABA has long been cautious to stay out of the political fray. And you, a corporate litigator from Missouri, are not the prototypical activist. What moved you and the ABA to go so public here?
It's a fascinating irony, I think, of the whole thing. Because when we, we were planning in October, they're going to have a new administration. We knew there was going to be a new president, and that always brings changes. I don't care who it is, it brings changes. Mm-hmm. And so we were planning for that. Obviously, after the election, we expedited our planning a lot. And candidly, we're still overwhelmed. I mean, how could you be prepared for all this? Yeah, there's a certain irony that I'm the president. When we dealt with some of our outside help, said, well, the problem will be, I'll bet you, your president is a member of some party and given a bunch of money. And I said, well, go look that up. And so he said, well, I've never been a Republican or Democrat. My last campaign contribution was to Dick Gebhardt, which was before some of you were born. I mean, he was a St. Louisan, for God's sakes. I liked him, okay? Politics is just not in my blood. I mean, it's not important. And so, but I think the principles that underlie our judicial system are important. That's why it's a profession. And so I remember coming out of our meeting, we had a mid-year meeting in Phoenix, and listening to people and listening to people, because I think part of leadership is listening. Who you listen to is really important. And I came back to Missouri, which is a red state. I have a lot of friends who are big Trump supporters. And many of them were saying, yeah, we like the ends he's putting out there, but we don't like the means of what he's trying to do. And I was so convicted that I thought, no, this is a moment in which we must speak and stand. And so we've decided to stand. You'll see a pattern. We're going to be very big on 3 issues. Rule of law, our judicial system, our profession, as well as diversity. We're just not going to retreat on those things. Those are core principles. There are other things we believe in. There are other things that are more controversial we've espoused. I get it. Somebody said, well, I don't agree with everything in the ABA, so I don't want to be a member. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, judges dissent. They don't resign from the courts they're in because they dissent from a decision. Legislatures don't quit Congress when they don't get their way on a bill. Sure, there's lots of things we disagree with. I don't agree with everything we put out because over 20 years, it's a legislative body. And so when we have 550 people representing the entire country, when we hit 276, that means it's become a resolution. Some people vote no. It's okay to vote no. And it was like, let me go back to home again. It's there were lots of things Angie and I disagreed out. Raising kids, about how we handled this situation or that situation, or whether to buy a car, whether to put the tree here or there, and what to do, and the wallpaper, what furniture to get, and that was fine. But we agreed on the important things, and that's why we stayed together, and that's why it's important that we stay together on the important things. That's what really counts here. It's the important things, and so I've become convinced that we have to speak on important things. Do I worry at night? Sure. At midnight, not always at 2 o'clock like last night, but at midnight, you can remember, you can think about all the things. Is my firm going to be affected? Is my family going to be affected? How am I going to be affected? How's the organization going to be affected? Are we going to have to lay off people? Those things. But in the end, and sometimes without being religious, sometimes I just got to say to God, you take care of that. I can take care of what I can control. And then wake up tomorrow and do the right thing. And I think we just have to wake up and do the right thing in what we can do on that day, every day.
Which relates in some way to one of the next questions, which is, please mention the importance for voting and what can the average citizen do? And then how about attorneys was also asked.
Well, I think obviously we should be voting, be informed voters, okay? Informed voters and ask the questions you need to ask. That's going to be a year and a half off. I've looked at all the electoral map and there's people that'll give you all kind of analysis. But what can you do? What can you do? I think one of the things is taking the video we showed about and explain why this matters. Because I talked to people and said, I know why it matters to you, Bill. You're a lawyer, the president of the ABA. Of course, you're supposed to say this matters. For you lawyers, I know it's important, but how does it really relate to us? And I think that's where the voice of what I call the common person, and I kind of view myself, I know I'm president of the ABA, but I always viewed myself as kind of just a guy who's sitting there in flyover country, for God's sakes, who knows his neighbors, and what can I say that resonates with them? And that's why you'll see interspersed in my remarks, talk about how it was, we did with my family. That's the story we need to be telling people. Because what's happening here, let me just take the administration, they want to reduce the size of government. Is government sometimes inefficient? Of course, we'd probably all say, of course it's inefficient. Of course it'd be more efficient. Whether government should be smaller or not is something everybody can have a different opinion on. The opinion of the bar is that you can't, if Congress has created entities, then president can't just decide they're getting rid of those. They have to go back to Congress. If Congress decides to reduce the government by 80%, we may not like it. I may not like it, but that is the law. And I think, so what it says is the ends doesn't justify the means that are being done. And I think we're going to be very critical of the means. And it's offensive really right now. That's just how else can you say it when you read the social media posts?
Exactly. Okay. A lot of
I'm taking too long to answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. There's a lot. There's 4 more. One of the next one is, what has been the international response among legal professionals, and are there resources from any particular countries assisting in developing a strategy to promote and protect the rule of law in the United States?
for years we've stood very closely with lots of our international partners and protect them when they have problems with the judges in Poland and other places where the rule of law has been under attack, and we stood there. And the great thing is, in this moment, when we need it, they've stood with us. They've issued statements. I mean, you go on the site, you'll see the International Bar Association, virtually every European bar has stood tall in their own words, and it's gratifying. It reminds you that what unites us is more important than what divides us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things we tried to do. We've lived a lot of times, we think that in the United States, hey, we got it, nobody else has it. Or the ABA, hey, we got all the answers, we'll do it alone. I think, we're in a world which increasingly calls us to partner with people, to hold hands with people. And so in the international community, they've been so great. And we've looked at, we've talked with them, how did they face it? What did they do? Those are all instructive, because I don't have every answer for what the solution is here. I just don't have every answer. That's why I want to hear from all of you guys. And somebody, the most unlikely person, may have the answer that works here. But that's why we have to listen and find out what we can do and adjust our strategy to deal with the realities that are here.
That's good. Next one, how do you believe historical behavior of lawyers has impacted current administration's behavior towards the legal system? Do you think it has?
Say that one again, yes.
The question is whether there was an impact on the administration's decisions towards the legal system.
Yeah, I think things like this, you see it's always a criticism, well, you didn't do this, or the lawyers did this to me, and the lawyers did that to me. And some of that narrative is not quite right, but there are plenty of things that have been done that I'm not defending, that have been done by individual lawyers. And I know the Wall Street Journal believes that that the Biden administration was weaponized against the Trump administration. That's how they espouse that there, although they just recently said 2 weeks ago that the president suggested that he was going to end weaponization of the government in his inaugural day address, and their lead editorial said at this point he needs to withdraw that as false advertising. And I thought, my gosh, it was the Wall Street Journal, for God's sakes, I was reading. I think we also have to be very mindful of how we act ourselves with lawyers. The most important thing is when you're in court and interact with people, treat them right. Sometimes we demonize the other side in cases and demonize other people. We've got to stop that. Grace is an important concept in our modern society. We have to give people some grace and try to understand the world through their eyes. I think I'm a better litigation lawyer because I try to understand what the other side's trying to do here. And I think there have been plenty of things we can cite in the past that are bad. But we can't live in a world where, because this happened 5 years ago, we're going to do this time. Because I think, again, it's the pattern, it's the frequency, it's the intensity. It is unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. And so we have to speak out and say, enough. This must stop. I don't care what's happened before. This has got to stop.
Bill, you're amazing. I really like that. Another question, how could or would regulatory or legal reform, for example, tort reform, help the legal profession?
Well, there's lots of things being looked at. Tort reform, of course, has been talked about for 20 years. There's been some. It depends on which state you're in. There's been more. Some of those have worked, some of them not so well. There's right now our National Center for State Courts. All the chief justices are looking at is, should there be more change in our profession? There's an access to justice gap. There's not enough lawyers for people to go to. And so should we permit non-lawyers to practice in certain discrete ways? A lot of the Western states are really the leaders in this. Really? I would guess half the states may push that way. Those are changes we're going to see. I think regulatory-wise, I think everybody's looking hard at public law school education. How should it change? How can we make lawyers more practice ready? Okay, ready to hit the ground and do the job. Those kind of regulatory changes, and there'll be more. There's always ways to improve. Believe me, I'm a big believer in change, even if everybody else isn't. I believe we must change and do things differently. Yeah. I'm not sure all the regulatory things will help in the point of crisis we're in right now. I think this is if if the rule of law comes under full attack and is now subject to whatever the executive branch wants to do, we've got real problems, and that cannot be fixed by regulation.
We have an audience question here.
Yes?
I could have started to write it down, but
Go for it.
I've started. I've reached that point where I'm having to pay out my RMD, and it's all going to Democracy Forward and Public Citizen and so forth. And I'm
Democracy
inspired.
Forward represented us in the domestic and sexual violence case. Yes.
I'm inspired by all the victories, but I'm scared to death. The victories in my mind are hollow if they cannot be enforced. And when I look to see, okay, this court decision's come down, who has to enforce it? It seems to me that most of that goes right back to the executive branch. And the executive branch has to enforce decisions against itself. I think this is where the constitutional crisis is going to come in.
Well, clearly there's great fears of that. I mean, and you read about in the papers and the media. It came to the fore again today in the argument this morning in the case that's pending in the U.S. Supreme Court, and where there was sharp questioning of the Solicitor General. Are you going to? Is the government obeying every court order? And there was some back and forth, and at some point said, the judge says, the justice said, I'm not asking about 1955. Let's talk about something in the last 2 weeks. And the response, I think, from the Solicitor General was as quoted, and I haven't heard the transcript or read the transcript or heard it, but generally will follow. Well, of course, the question is generally, really? Okay. Now, we ought to check, make sure the transcript says that. But is that a great fear? Yes. I am in fear of all these things. But I got to deal with the things that are in front of us. And what we have to do right now is we have a message that we need to make sure it resonates with people so they understand why this is important. You understand this, but I can tell you lots of people where I interact with don't understand it. I have lots of lawyers who don't understand it. Yeah, it's great, Bill, I'm glad you're doing it. Or those are for those big New York firms or the DC firms or people in the political process, but I'm just doing divorce cases. I'm just helping people write an estate plan. That's an audience I've got to be concerned with, why it matters to them. And that's, I'm more worried about that. I mean, I know what you're saying. I don't disagree. I wish I had, if I had 3 things, I'd push them out on social media and you'd send them out. It would be great. But it's hard to know exactly what steps to take, and we're going to have some missteps. But that's why we got to listen and figure out where we're going. And it's somebody said, well, is the ABA approve of this or ABA approve of that? Hey, it's not everything has to come through the ABA. We're looking for everybody to do things. We'll help where we can, and we're going to be supportive where we can, but there's an effort way over here that may be the best effort of all. Believe me, I'm supportive of that.
Can I ask a question? There's 2 more, but let me ask you a quick question that relates to my history. I was the chair of the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, and the person who succeeded me as the chair was still there, but she received a letter from the president saying, "You're fired." And she sent it to me, and the issue is there, he can't fire her because she and I were both confirmed by the Senate, and he did not appoint either one of us. And I'm just curious about your perspective on that, because it makes it really difficult, and her understanding of the rationale for that letter was because the FEC actually has the right to interrogate the president, because it had to do with campaign finance and how much was spent during the election, and whether it was legal according to the FEC laws and rules. And as a result, that led to something like, she told me, about 40 complaints that were filed against the president at the FEC. And that's their job there, is to look at that. And I'm just curious about your perspective on that issue.
Well, the broader issue really highlights this administration believes in forgot what the term is, unitary power of the president to do everything. He can control the whole executive branch.
He can't.
It's an argument that hasn't held sway. I'm not saying he can't make the argument, but you see it in all three of these areas right now. With the Impoundment Act, yes, it seems reasonable that the president paused funding. I mean, governors do that all the time. They do line item vetoes. There's not line item vetoes. Okay, that's how the federal government works. There's an Impoundment Act. There's an argument to be made that some people say it's not constitutional. Make the argument in court. You can't decide. You make the argument in court. The Alien Enemies Act. Yes, the administration believes that it should apply here. Most people do not. But that's an argument for court instead of doing under cover of night. Okay? Go make the arguments in court. The terminating employees at independent agencies, many of which were created in the 60s, has been around for 50 years. I mean, people talk about the case, the Humphreys estate, which is back in 1916, all before most of us, I hope. If anybody here's over 100, come onto the stage. But I mean, those are legal arguments to me. That's why we have a system. You can't just decide, I've decided all these are unconstitutional laws, and we're not going to obey them, and we're going to just do it right now in 2 hours' notice. That's what's wrong. That's the underlying problem that is a threat to our system and how the rule of law has worked. Arguments about some case may not be constitutional. Hey, come on down.
Okay. 2 more questions here. One that came up earlier. You spoke about 8th grade education, learning the 3 branches, and also the difference between what hoi polloi say or think the law is versus what it actually is. Is the ABA focusing on how we preserve the introduction and meaningful understanding of the rule of law among our youngest citizens, tomorrow's voters and lawyers?
Yeah, we need to rethink all how we teach civics. I mean, I learned in 8th grade. How many other people learned in 8th grade? Probably a few. And others will say, no, it doesn't happen anymore. And what we've said sometimes is schools, it's your job to do. Well, let me say it's more than the school's job. It's the profession's job. It's our society's job. We're going to have to rethink how we do civics. What we are doing is not wrong, but it hasn't been effective enough. And I know we've had discussions with the Chief Justice of every Supreme Court in the state, in the country, about how we've got to rethink what's here. We've got to talk about what's here and rethink how we're approaching. So that's one of many challenges. But and we can't just say, oh, schools, would you go do it? Schools are doing already. We can't just let, the schools can't be counted on doing everything. I know sometimes, we count on the police doing everything and schools doing everything. Sometimes we have to do things, and we can supplement those things. But I think that's the biggest thing. We have to find, the surveys show that most people think judges are not answerable to on anybody on ethics. Because of some of the recent deals. And yet the facts are that every judge, state or federal judge, every judge in the country, except for 9, are subject to an outside entity that measures ethics. Now, the 9 or the Supreme Court have their own ethical code, which they take care of. But it's not at all what people think. And we haven't told them that. And you get the surveys. The surveys are out there. I think people don't understand what the government does. They figure, well, the president can spend money however he wants. I mean, one of the issues is that Congress hasn't been working the way it should for a number of years. I mean, and I understand the president, not this president, a number of presidents get frustrated. Well, Congress won't act, so I'm going to do an executive order. Okay, sometimes that's okay, but the proliferation of this has been a problem. And there's been no law passed in Congress here since they've taken office, and there's no move forward. Just because you campaign for something doesn't mean you can do it. I mean, when President Obama took over, he campaigned about health care. Well, he couldn't decree health care. Shoot, they had to horse trade in Congress for months, as you remember, only passed by a vote or two. That's our process. And when our congressional leaders don't feel motivated enough to deal with and compromise on tough issues, that's part of the reason where we are. Yeah. Okay, not the sole reason. I mean, there's lots of reasons, but that's one of the problems.
Yeah. Okay, one more here. What is this like And what is the support for DOJ lawyers who are currently trying to argue the administration's positions in front of various benches, I presume, courts? It's an interesting exercise in the neutrality or morality of professionals.
Well, the whole Justice Department's, I mean, you could speak to this more because you were there. You speak first and I'll respond because I think people don't understand what the traditional position of justice has been. It's so important.
Yes. Well, this is another issue somewhat similar to what happened to my FEC colleague. Right. When I was at the Justice Department in the Obama administration, it was clear what our obligations were. It was very obvious that we had to never go to talk to the president about any issues that we might be concerned about. But beyond that, I was in the civil division of the Justice Department. Beyond that, what we did was on behalf of the American public. And so those are things, too, that concern me because a lot of my colleagues who were in the Department of Justice at the same time I was were also fired.
No, it's. I mean, we have people that some in the Justice Department say that it's, I'm the president's lawyer. Okay, we know who those are. Okay, you can read them in the media. Or people that have been demoted for cases they worked on. People that represented people in the January 6th attacks suddenly are demoted back to starting pay. Really, it's outrageous. I mean, it's truly outrageous. I mean, people are assigned matters to do. In our law firms, we assign lawyers to do certain things, and to think that they would be demoted or fired because of not how they did something, but simply because they were assigned to these cases just cannot happen. Just cannot happen.
Okay, one last question because we have a 10-minute full stop after this. Will our judicial system remain independent? Will the court system hold against the pressures to be subjected to executive branch and political control?
Good questions. I hope so. I don't know the future, but I hope so. I mean, our courts, I think, are doing a really great job of trying in a really difficult environment when there are threats to them. Obviously, we haven't talked about threats to them, but threats to your family, that's above and beyond the call. Really? I mean, are they going to make every right decision all the time? No. I mean, I laughed at somebody that says, I haven't liked every judge I ever was in front of. Some I didn't like. Some of them I still remember the decision they ruled against me. I didn't look to impeach them. I didn't threaten them. And I think, and that's why we have to be supportive. It is perfectly fine to criticize a decision out of the Supreme Court or any other court. We don't have to like it, and we can say so. But the things that are going on, the courts, I mean, we have to speak up, and that's in every lawyer's oath they take to defend the courts. Am I worried about whether the courts will hold the line? Yeah, I am, of course. How can you not be intimidated by some of the threats? You cannot be unaffected by this. And that's why we have to really, I come back to the beginning, we have to document the pattern, the frequency and intensity. That's why this Reuters article was so important.
So there's a couple more online questions, okay. And I think that one of them that would be important for you to talk about, with increasing attacks on the independence of judges, how do we safeguard public trust in the courts? And what reforms should be considered to insulate institutions from political interference?
Well, we have safeguards in place, okay? They're holding, but imperfectly. I think with the public, interestingly enough, a lot of the surveys have indicated that people wanted a fair and impartial judiciary. That resonates more than independent judiciary. Because sometimes people say, well, why can one judge just do whatever he or she wants? Well, they can't. Okay, they can't. That's why God created appeals. I mean, he didn't, but yes,
could have been.
When lawyers make mistakes, that's why God created amended pleadings. Okay, this is okay. But I think that's why. I just think that's where we're at. We got to be talking about fair and impartial. Everybody deserves the same justice. That the videotape in the beginning shows the answers there. Those are hardly controversial concepts. I just can't believe we're in a day where we're having to defend it and against the statements and social media from our own government. That's what's shocking. I mean, there's always been people that are, you talk that are out there, but this is a bigger problem than I ever imagined I'd have to face.
Truly. This is another question about the ABA and what you might have to face. Are you doing anything at the ABA to educate the public about legal rights, especially in vulnerable communities?
Yeah, I think we're still, we have a program called Free Legal Answers. We have lots of free legal answers that go online. Like, what's the facts about this thing you've read in the media? What's there? We're still doing immigration pro bono law academies. This is really critical right now. There's so much disinformation, misinformation, offers to leave the country. I mean, you've read about them all. The law is complicated in immigration. Believe me, I don't do it. I learned a little bit about it. It's very complicated, and it's the result of years and years of people kind of hodgepodging it. So people need answers. I mean, domestic violence. We're still speaking out about that and trying to help people with domestic violence clinics, and fortunately restored. Income tax prep. We still do a lot of that. I think one of the things is, despite this crisis, lawyers and bar associations had to remember that our big job is to help lawyers be better and to serve the public and to have community projects that help serve the public. We can't get so fixated, and believe me, I get fixated. We can't forget what our prime function is. Help lawyers be better and help our communities be better and give them information. That's just so important. And it sounds like I got 3 or 4 missions, and we do have 3 or 4 missions, maybe more.
One more question, and I'm also online. And are there examples from recent history, United States history or international, where lawyers successfully defended constitutional rights under some similar political pressure?
I know you're going to ask me a hard question I don't know the answer to, but I will say in the U.S., the John Adams thing gets all the kind of play, and that's just classic lawyers know. There may be some of you may out in the audience know some more contemporary examples. I probably should have come up with that. But if we don't have any examples, it still is, as I come back in closing, this is our time. This is our time as a profession. This is our time as lawyers. This is our time as community leaders to speak out. This is the moment. I'm not going to obsess about all the things that could happen, all the bad things. This is a time for opportunity. This is a time to not complain, not to whine, and I can do both, okay, like my travel, but to re-educate, to tell people what the real facts are and why this matters. This is that moment that could be, looking back, our finest moment.
Thank you for that response, because one of the questions here, I think, is would have been a really good response to it, because it's for forward-thinking reasons. What gives you hope about the legal profession's ability to meet the challenges we're facing today? And I think you've expressed that pretty well.
And you get out and talk to people. Like I said, I live in Missouri. It voted for the president. Okay, that's fine. But I talk to people. You want to hear the voices and hear the real concerns and things there. They're from, my wife's family is from a rural part of Missouri. I love to go down there. They have different issues. They're part of us. We have to pay attention to those things. Yes, I think people recognize we have something precious here, and we have to hold on to it. And I think that's the thing that gives me great hope.
That's good. And the final question, I think, I'm not sure how much time we have left, but
1 minute.
1 minute? Well, then this has to do with you then. What specific actions is the ABA taking to push back against efforts that undermine the rule of law? And the question about individual lawyers or law firms, whether they can speak out about political pressure without jeopardizing their careers.
Well, there's a lot of things we've talked about. It's a little bit
we
like,
have.
let me go to the movie analogy. This is like an Indiana Jones film. I love the Indiana Jones films. We're at minute 36, okay? Indiana Jones is in peril. Lots of things are going wrong. I get it. But there's a lot more movie to come and things to be had. And we're going to form that narrative. It's our story to write. We have to write the story and be part of the story. And we can be.
You'll do a good job at writing that story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill Bay. Thanks for ending on that upbeat note. Thanks for your service as president of the American Bar Association. Anne, former chair of the Federal Election Commission, thank you for your continued presence, voice, hard work to promote ethical and moral standards in our society.
And thanks to the Commonwealth Club. I mean, this is
Yes.
great. I look at the programs today. This is great. This is a great organization because this is the kind of forums that we need to give voice to these kind of speakers. So I can't say enough about it.
Thank you. We do it every day and we'll continue to do it. Thank you to our audience here and online. Thank you for your great questions. Hope to see you again soon. This is the end of today's program at the Commonwealth Club. Thank you.